everybody. This is Professor Truth, and I wanted to get out a quick wisdom for today, primarily on Planet X. You're going to hear Larry and Stewart talk about Planet X. I thought it was so good what they did that I wanted to kind of just present it for you in case you're not aware of their channel. Do support Larry and Stewart. Before we get into that, I just also wanted to let you know that just got back from a couple trips, one out to Arizona and one to Florida, and just gives you a perspective on different places. But we all live in beautiful places. I'm sure many of you do also. But the point is, time is short. Time is so short. We met some folks in both places, and they were so starved for the truth of the Bible, especially Christian identity truth. And on another time, I'm going to just kind of run through some of the basics. I also ran into a really good friend of mine, John, who is a Catholic, but he's open-minded in the sense he was very interested in many of the things. He did pose to me, and I posed to all of you, the question, is it not sufficient to know that Jesus is God, he incarnated and died for our sins? Is that not sufficient? And what I got from Father while he asked me that question was, well, it's sufficient for some, but not for all. We're in a war, is what Father told me. Remember, you're in a war. You have to know your enemy. You have to know that it is a war, and that the enemy takes on many forms. And if you're not ready, you're not going to do too well in this life. It is sufficient to overcome and make it into the next life if you stick to the basics, that Jesus is God. He died on the cross for our redemption of our sins. You can be redeemed with that understanding if you believe it in truth, as long as you're, of course, born from above. The problem is when you add to it all the doctrines of men and half-truths and Judeo-Christianity, those types of things, it weakens your walk. And in this life, you open up legal strongholds that the enemy can attack you and your family if you go beyond that truth in the land of error. So Christian identity is important, and the bigger things are important. Last, before we get into Planet X, I wanted to just tell you about some herbs. Lost Empire Herbs. Here's a product for men I highly recommend. It's called, I can't even pronounce it though. It is called Tangat Al. Tangat Al for men, Lost Empire Herbs. And then for women, there's an Athena's formula. An Athena's formula here. Highly recommend Lost Empire Herbs. Nobody else. Very expensive, but I'll tell you what, if you get those and the pine pollen, get the pine pollen for men and women, get the Athena formula for women, and then for men, get the Tangat Al. The pine pollen is awesome. It's awesome. So enough of me, everybody. Glad to be back. Glad to be back. We got some shows coming up. I pulled down some of the Flat Earth shows. I don't like the type of energy associated with a lot of those folks. If you just look, I'll put up a picture right here I took with my own camera. You see the crescent moon. You see a crescent moon. What do you think that is? Well, that's the shadow of a spherical round Earth on the moon. Case closed. If you don't get it, you won't get it. All we can do is pray for you. With that, Planet X, I'm bringing it up because I personally believe it is the judgment tool that Father God uses and has used many times. I think Gil Broussard is right on. I think Larry and Stewart have brought up information that's compelling. And you recall, I wrote an article the third day, September 23rd, 2017, and I said we have probably 3.5 years or 7 years till judgment. And Roger Hathaway thinks Christ will return around 2033. I think it could be sooner. But remember, may it be that you are worthy to escape all these things, right? So anyway, Professor Truth, here we go. Larry and Stewart, support their channel with Planet X.
everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening. And we have Larry on his phone down south. How are you doing there, Larry?
Oh, I'm holding up. You know how there's just a lot in the news, but a lot of it you got to dig out. One thing that Augusto did get from another individual, and it appears to be on this Portuguese tape too, is the fact that he's claiming, this Israeli doctor is claiming that 2020 Nibiru becomes visible, basically, going into 2020 and on into 2021.
The White House received, this is from Dr. Sam, the White House received on Tuesday an urgent diplomatic telegram affirming that the French government can use nuclear arms to destroy a celestial intruder, Nibiru, headed for the Earth, according to a source in Washington, who says that President Trump barely looked at the document before handing it over to his chief scientific advisor, meteorologist Kevin Meyer, for further analysis. Our sources said that the document was authored by a Jean-Yves Le Gall, president of the French National Center for Space Studies. Le Gall warns that Nibiru is close to the perigee and will soon provoke cataclysmic effects on Earth unless decisive measures are taken to alter its path or to destroy it. I want to read something from the book of the Culburn. Now, this is an ancient document. It's a collection of documents, actually. There's a couple of verses here I want to read, and then we're going to get into this destroyer. You may remember we've had a number of pictures that have come in from different parts of the world that appear to be authentic of an object beside the sun. And first, usually it's on the either right or the left side, and a lot of people think this is all, a hoax. But the Bible says, no, it's not, that the destroyer is on its way. Anyway, I want to read from the book of the Culburn, and this is kind of interesting in view of what the Lord said about how we are to search the Lord out with all due diligence and find Him, not just believe on Him, not just have faith in Him, but He Himself ordered us to seek, ask, knock, strive, labor, and come to Him. Anyway, I will seek diligently for enlightenment and knowledge, that I may proclaim the ways of the true God among people, for they are mysterious ways, not easily understood. Man wallows in a quicksand of ignorance, and only by extreme effort can he extricate himself. Great Overseer, grant me the ability to understand. Hail, Great Overseer of the earth. So that is kind of just wording it different, but it's basically exactly what the Lord said to do. By extreme effort can he extricate himself. Why is that? Here's another verse, and this is on Marshall Masters' book on the Culburns, page 132, 133 that I'm reading from. Here we have, that's another quote, here we have fallen victims of our own wiles. We have hopelessly snarled up the threads of our existence, so we know not how to loosen the knots we ourselves have tied and so free ourselves. We are entangled in a net of our own weaving. Let us, your servants, look to you, the Great One, for aid. Our destinies are held in the hollow of your hands, while the future is visible to you as in writing upon an open scroll. The fall severed man from the source of his spiritual substance. Therefore, his efforts were to struggle back. In his blind groping for God after the fall, he discovered demons and found it easier to worship them than to continue the search. They did not partake of wisdom, and fruit from the tree of knowledge is bitter. Men are denying their true birthright. The fall of man was a fall from a loving contact with God into material carnality. The soul that has been shared, the consciousness of God, fell into unconsciousness by becoming ensnared in matter. Now, that sounds an awful lot like New Age, but basically it has an element of truth in it. And we are ensnared in a material world. And as we said in frequency, we have a veil over our mind. When the fall came, a veil came over, so you can't see anything. We think this existence is it, but it isn't. There's another existence, far, far higher. Anyway, I'll get on to other things now. Larry, let's start with this destroyer stuff. It's interesting, the timing of how all this is starting to come down. You talked to Augusto, who can interpret some language from a source. Can you enlighten us on what you have found so far?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's Dave Eels of Unleavened Bread Ministry actually came across the video and the data from an individual by the name of Dr. Sam, appears to be an Israeli scientist that is not allowed to put anything on Nibiru, if you will, on the internet or YouTube or any of those. He's allowed to do it in other languages, but just not English. So, interestingly, and I'll say this, it's odd that, because he does appear to be an Israeli Jew, that he's got this information and willing to give it out. I sent you a copy of the one of the videos in Portuguese. It was literally it was given in Portuguese, and it was translated from Arabic. And if you read the wording, matter of fact, Dave Eels has it on his website, and you've got a copy of that. Also, the written message of some of this data, which is really interesting because remember Dr. Haralick and I believe Rabbi Glazerson had run a code for Richard on Nibiru. And, those individuals, they just don't run a code because it's there. I mean, they really are very particular on what they run and what words and the language and all of that that they're looking into. But they found a code, and I've got that captured. I posted it a couple of times on my website. I got it from Richard Shaw. But it was encoded in the Torah of something called Nibiru, a little bit different spelling, not Nibiru normally is Nibra, but anyway, it also claims it's a star system. And that didn't get out. They didn't really let that out. I've got a copy, and I think I've showed it to you and a few others, but they kept, all of this stuff is kept quiet. Well, anyway, Augusto Perez, I sent it to him also because he speaks Spanish, and he knows a little bit of other languages, and since it's in Portuguese, I gave it to him yesterday, and I sent you a copy of it yesterday. And Augusto listened to it 2 or 3 times and made notes and was able to discern or make analysis of the information, and he claims that this appears to be legitimate and real. And it's so interesting because of the fact that, we had all this come out years ago. You remember back 2012 through 2017, we was hearing a lot about it, and then suddenly it vanished from the internet.
Yes.
It vanished from radio shows. It vanished from everything. But
yeah, the
about
only one that
time
was doing it was Marshall Masters, right? He kept on it.
Yeah, he stuck with it. And he still got it up. And matter of fact, we've seen some very interesting photographs, which this guy claims that Deep State is removing all the photographs that are legitimate. And also there appears to be something in the chemtrails that unless you just can look just right, you won't even see this around the sun at all. It's just the sky has got this substance in it that prevents that. And so some of the images that we're getting are hard to see. You can't hardly see them, and in a few minutes they might even be gone. You know, if you didn't take the picture at the right time, you might not get it anyway. But what's so interesting is Augusto listened to this a number of times, and it ties in with interviews that he's had with other individuals, Bob Fletcher's one and others, talking about an incoming. And, of course, there's different names, Planet X, Destroyer, Nemesis. I mean, there's a whole lot of names, Planet 10, I mean, all kind of stuff. But what is interesting about this is also a report that what makes it difficult to see also is it says between Earth and the intruder. This guy calls it the intruder solar system, and he calls it a solar system. It's not, you know, he don't act like it's one thing. It's a solar system. But he says two things also prevent or make it difficult to detect this system. One is that there is an electromagnetic shock wave of radiation moving in front of this, and also the solar winds from the sun. And so there is reasons that this is very, very difficult to pick up on. And, of course, if you've got governments that are trying to stop you from seeing it, it's difficult. Now, what's interesting, too, that ties into this, Stewart, is the fact that, you know, and, of course, this video in Portuguese talked about Nibiru's approach. He calls it, he says, where is the enemy solar system? And I sent you a little graph thing, you know, that seems to indicate it's out by Jupiter right now. What's odd is, you know, I want to throw this, kind of dovetail this into it, because I'm going to read something from a book, Planet X, the 2017 arrival. Well, it didn't arrive in 2017. However, Stewart, Augusto mentioned also, and I was aware of it, and you too, that about 2016, the 2016 election, something changed. I mean, in the spirit realm, in the heavens, I mean, there was a dramatic shift in everything, and suddenly we had a prophetic 45th president that was never predicted or even prophesied, basically, that we know of. I mean, every word that you ever heard was number 44 was the end. That was the last of it. But it seems like possibly we've been given a period of grace for the 4 years of Trump, believe it or not. And he's in his last year, the fourth year, if everything moves on. But the interesting thing is the fact that, you know, we had a time shift at that point in time, and we pivoted towards Israel, which changed a lot of stuff, you know, on the timeline. And what's so interesting is the fact, Stewart, that including in this presentation, it says, and I can't vet this, other than we know some of the data. It says that President Trump wants to send or has directed a U.S. spacecraft, which was reverse engineered from a UFO. He has directed it to the Nibiru system for exploration up close by, guess what, the United States Space Force. My question is, what's the odds that suddenly Trump, right out of nowhere, declares a U.S. Space Force that's black project and secret, and he brings it out in the open, makes it public? Isn't this interesting?
Well, I think what's happened is they've known for a long time this was coming. And they have developed this backwards engineered anti-gravity technology for a long time. And the TR-3Bs are very real. And there are a whole bunch of different TR-3Bs. And it kind of ties into an operation where they were interviewing Dr. Paul LaViolette. I keep bringing him up because nobody gives him credit, but LaViolette is actually a genius, and he's the one who talked about gravity waves, cosmic waves, how they distort everything when they're traveling through, and how it's going to really affect the Earth. And then we got Mike from around the world who's already been talking about how these waves are coming through already, and et cetera, et cetera. Let me read from this Dr. Sam. Here's one, and we can talk about that, Larry. Now, this intrusive celestial body already has crossed vast distances of our solar system. Only Jupiter stood before it as a field incapacitating to the acceleration of the movement. But when it passes this orbit, it will be subjected to the influences of the gusts of the solar wind, which will cause a resistance according to the line of movement and inhibits its movement relatively. At the same time, the solar winds will transform this dark, intrusive celestial body into a luminous body with a giant tail of plasma. See, we're in an electric universe, folks. Basically, plasma. We're floating in a sea, I believe, of plasma. And body electric. We are also a body electric. This is why we're so susceptible to these changes in the Schumann resonance. And very, very soon, we're going to have some major, major changes that are going to affect humanity. And then here's one other. Knowing that the Earth is orbiting away from it, and the solar winds at the lowest levels do not form a deformation of field because they are parallel to the magnetic field of Earth. So from where came these gravitational distortions? If this object was a thermal object, we would feel its high temperatures on the Earth. But it is a giant magnet with strong force of field that causes defects in the field of any object that comes near it. And this is itself causes total disequilibrium, as is happening now on Earth. Now, Larry, you had that prophet that you turned me on to from Norway, and what did he say? There would come disquietings in the core of the Earth. And we have all this cosmic energy coming in from the core of the Milky Way. We've already got pictures of a huge, huge explosions coming out of there. Well, that would have been like 1,000 years ago or so, or maybe even more, depending on the actual distance from the core of the Milky Way to Earth. So you got that time in there, but of course the Lord has timed this down to the split second. And that's what I find so fascinating.
Well, I just want to interject there real quick because you just mentioned the Schumann resonance, and that's something that's on that tape in Portuguese that Augusto was able to detect. The Israeli scientist was arguing that this Schumann resonance was involved with this planetary system because as closer it got, it was actually affecting the Schumann resonance. And I know you may have to explain what that is so people understand, but what he was saying was that this was already affecting Earth and the people on Earth, and it's raising the Schumann resonance up. It's getting higher the closer this gets.
Yeah, and we can prove that. I think we brought that up on Night Shadow some time ago. But the Schumann resonance, it's really, the Earth has a frequency, and our brains are tuned to the Earth Schumann resonance, which is, I think, 8-point-something, whatever. But anyway, there have been spikes now up to over 100, and it does affect the mentality or the mental processes of the body. And this is what actually Dr. Paul LaViolette was talking about, because as these frequency, as these cosmic waves come through obviously they are connected to changes in frequency, which in turn changes your DNA, which in turn can probably turn some people into kind of zombies. I guess I hate to use that word, but that's basically what's happening. It's a whole lot more serious than people are, they're just kind of poo-pooing all this. If you just looked out your front door, you wouldn't realize probably anything was going on. However, if you look at what's going on all around the world, earthquakes, volcanic activity is increasing very rapidly. Sinkholes, rifts, all these things are rapidly occurring all over the planet. It's not, but you have to go out on the internet and just kind of look around. And weather has been erratic and changing rapidly. Our climate's changing. Anyway, here's another comment from him. We have to read between the lines. NASA and the secret government, the swamp, that controls the U.S. government, the media, and NASA, and in fact all organizations, not just space, has obviously ordered images of Nibiru edited out of Soho images. So the public is not to know. And only an image here or there escapes the electronic editing that is done at the Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, U.S. Now, this is very, very interesting because they're doing the same thing with images coming from the moon of artificial buildings that we did not build on Mars as well. In fact, I found one. If you go to our Angel Fall 923, watch Project Red Star. It's very obvious that there's artificial structures there. Been there for a long time, probably. Anyway, to finish on a more spiritual or contextual note, because Nibiru is indeed spiritualizing the earth, rising its human resonance, which mentally affects every living creature on the earth, not just us humans, to put us into a different and much higher frequency range. And when I was doing all the research on frequency, when we were created, we were at an extremely high frequency, if a frequency at all. When we fell, we drastically lowered our frequency. The dark side is at a much lower realm, which is why they call it the underworld, lower. When Jesus told you to go to the lowest room and wait, what did he say? He would come to you and he would say to you, friend, come up higher. In other words, when a person is in truth born from above, their frequency is changed and they are protected from all of these changes that are soon going to come. This is not new. That Belgian, I think he was, prophet, said that there was coming a change in frequency and that a whole bunch of people would just simply vanish. The matrix, the digital matrix that's coming up, all of this stuff is based upon the fact that we're in lockdown. That's why Jesus said, we are in a prison house. I came to set the prisoners free. We are in lockdown, the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy, everything kind of fades away. Even scientists are saying galaxies eventually would just fade away. And the universe, if just allowed to go, would eventually just disappear into nothingness. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. It's entropy. It's the second law of thermodynamics. That's what locks us down, and the reason that came down upon us, it's a curse. It's a curse because of the fall, the ingestion of the knowledge of good and evil. It's real. They are two spiritual forces, and it's so simple, but yet I don't think too many people are grasping it. Just like the book of the Culburn said, they're not understanding it.
One thing that Augusto did get from another individual, and it appears to be on this Portuguese tape too, is the fact that he's claiming, this Israeli doctor is claiming that 2020 Nibiru becomes visible, basically, going into 2020 and on into 2021. And at about the same time, reportedly insiders have advised that the governments are planning either to prevent the population from doing what I guess the population would do in history if they saw something massive in the sky one day above them, that they're going to start, he said, a World War III or a great pandemic or global pandemic as a cover.
Well, there's probably several reasons why they might do that. Yes, it definitely would cover, but it would also get rid of a lot of people, so when they go underground, they won't have to fight a whole mass of people when they come back out. Anyway, here's another thing. The White House received, this is from Dr. Sam, the White House received on Tuesday an urgent diplomatic telegram affirming that the French government can use nuclear arms to destroy a celestial intruder, Nibiru, headed for the Earth, according to a source in Washington, who says that President Trump barely looked at the document before handing it over to his chief scientific advisor, meteorologist Kevin Meyer, for further analysis. Our sources said that the document was authored by Jean-Yves Le Gall, president of the French National Center for Space Studies, and approved by Emmanuel Macron, whose handwritten signature appeared at the bottom of the summary. Le Gall warns that Nibiru is close to the perigee and will soon provoke cataclysmic effects on Earth unless decisive measures are taken to alter its path or to destroy it. Apparently, he discounted the first writing, as our greatest scientists have ruled out moving Nibiru because no terrestrial force can move Nibiru. The only option left is to destroy it, to destroy Nibiru before it potentially destroys life on Earth. Now, this is interesting in light of the Book of the Culburn, because the Book of the Culburn does say that the brave ones will attempt to destroy the destroyer. They cannot do it. They fail at what they attempt, but they do try it. And this is also interesting, Larry, because you had a vision about what this thing was. It's evidently a failed star, basically, and it's a collapsed star known as a brown dwarf, and around it are all these planets. And I guess there's like 6 or 7 planets from the stuff that was leaked a long time ago by some scientists. I think they were down in Antarctica. And I think some of them paid with their life for bringing that out to the public. It's a solar system. It's a small solar system. But this brown dwarf has a terrifically high gravitational field, and we already now know that gravitational fields distort time and space, probably, like you were saying, hiding this thing so we can't see it, for the most part. It's in, it's out. It's in, it's out, depending on the force fields that it's been subjected to. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right, Stewart, and I believe one of the guys that had a very interesting sudden death was Harrington. Was that his name?
Yeah.
A number of years ago, he was a whistleblower. But let me read you something real quick here. It's from the book called Planet X, the 2017 Arrival, by David Mead. It's an old book, and what's interesting is in it something I didn't know existed. He's got a little section on the Nibiru sky disk and Planet X. Listen to this. It says a 12-inch bronze disk, the Nibiru sky disk, may be the key to determining the last recorded time in history that Planet X flew by the Earth. The disk is bronze and inlaid with gold. The sky disk of Nibiru was found near Europe's oldest observatory in Gossik. The story of the disk is an unconventional discovery. It was found in 1999 by German treasure hunters using metal detectors in an ancient forest. And it says it contains symbols including the sun, the moon, and the constellations Pleiades, Capricorn, Petrus, and Gemini. The disk reflects the sun in position of a solar eclipse. What is causing the eclipse? Something between Earth and the sun. Said it's not the moon, which is on the opposite side of where it should be located. The best deductive logic is that an unknown near-Earth object is causing an eclipse. It says the 32-centimeter disk weighs approximately 2 kilograms and is decorated with gold leaf symbols reflecting the 4 planets, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Mercury. Using modern-day astronomical software, we can plot the actual day and hour the disk was produced. And they did that because of the sky system on the disk. Mm-hmm. And says the result is April the 6th, 1810 BCE, before Christ, 8:30 a.m. That's the sky system in the on the disk. Says the disk was thus created 3,826 years ago. Says there is a curved bar at the bottom of the riverbank, the Salé River, which is currently still exists. The disk is coloration is green due to a tarnishing effect. But this is interesting, Stewart. It says a very interesting point discovered upon examination is that the disk reflects the constellation Orion. So see, Stewart, right there you've got the Pleiades and the Orion on that disk, which Job talks about from the Creator. And it says the disk reflects the constellation Orion at the very bottom. Orion should not have been observable from that location in Germany at that time. The nearest location from which it could have been observed is Luxor, Egypt. And so that adds to the mystery. And says basically it appears the mystery-shrouded sky disk of Nibiru is thus an advanced astronomical clock. And what do you think? That is really interesting, and it also says it is the oldest visual representation of the sky in existence, and it postulates the approach of a near-Earth object causing the daytime eclipse as well as causing a major pole shift that occurred 3,826 years ago.
We have no idea of the ancient past, and it's being hid from us. I think some people do, because the book of the Culburn says the wise know where it went, the destroyer, and they know when it's coming back. Now, you mentioned 2017. When I did the Omega Code, which is also free on Angel Fall 923, the date 2017 kept showing up all the time. Now, if you took Daniel's a day for a year, we would be starting from the 923 star sign on 2017. 3 years gives us into 2020. And a 3-year delay is very possible.
Yeah, and to go along with that, Stewart, David Meade, I was shocked because as I was looking through this book, right after the sky disk report, he had my missiles of October laid out there and indicated possibly those, I never knew where those missiles were being fired. But reckon they fire them into space? Remember, there was an old movie coming in where an asteroid or something was coming in, and Sean Connery, I believe, played in it. I can't remember exactly. And
they tried to hit it.
Tried to hit it, but What it reminded me of, though, Stewart, is the fact that, remember, I believe it was Bob Fletcher, in an interview with Augusto Perez, he was an insider, and he said he knew, remember when Augusto got that, the Death Star image?
Yes. Vision.
And anyway, Bob Fletcher then released information that we have a Death Star out there. He said it's already out there. And remember, I had an experience where I saw some weapon in space and didn't know which way it was pointing, but I saw it up close. And Bob Fletcher seemed to indicate that he was aware of this weapon. It was out there, and he wouldn't describe what it did, but he said he hoped to God nobody ever fired this thing without knowledge of where they're going to aim it, because it's bad. And remember, I looked at the gun port or whatever it was on it, and the only thing in the internet I could find that was close was a particle beam weapon.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. Yep. We have weapons that nobody even knows about, just like the anti-gravity TR-3Bs, UFO, circular objects. The only question you have to ask folks is it ours? Is it theirs? Or is it demonic? Or is it blue beam projection? We've got a lot of blue beam projections going on right now, and this is all part of the arrival, the false Messiah arrival. It's all starting to come together and make sense. And the fear index is, of course, climbing every time you get wars and rumors of wars and all of this. The fear index goes up. And here's another find, Larry. Mysterious tic-tac UFO Vimana, this is the ancient Indian craft, slices through rare U.S. Air Force communications plane in skies over Afghanistan. But this thing goes into that they have also discovered the German UFO Bell, B-E-L-L. It looks like a bell. And so we're finding all kinds of stuff. And the Germans did, in fact, have all kinds of high-tech weaponry. And like you said, isn't it odd that Trump goes public with Starfleet Command, United Federation of Planets, I guess one could call it, eventually, Department of the Air Force, and the symbol on it is very much like the Starfleet movies. And it looks very much like a TR-3B on the insignia of this new United States Space Forces. I think they've come out, they're going to have to come out with what they've got, at least in part. It's sort of like the Blue Beam Project, where they are projecting images that you can even videotape. I've seen some of them on YouTube because people couldn't figure out, well, what is this? They'd have an airliner flying through above a city, for example, and all of a sudden it would stop, and then it would back up, and then it would go forward. Well, we don't have airplanes like that. So they were speculating, well, possibly this was anti-gravity, that our airplanes now have anti-gravity. My guess is no. What this is a Blue Beam Project. They're experimenting with it. They're getting ready for the strong delusion of Cephalonians. It's really going to be just a projection, but it's going to look for all the world real. And then the advanced German technology that we've probably been working on the dark side of the moon or on Mars will be used, and they will mix blue beam projection with real anti-gravity arrival of craft, probably from the Fourth Reich. Because that's really what we're going into, I think, is a Fourth Reich situation. Anyway, what else you got, Larry?